welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I am, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 165th episode, a returning guest is Ash Burgess. First heard Ash Burgess on episodes 16, 26, 27, 39, 58, 63, 77, 86, 91, 100, 124, 130, 136, 142, 143, 148, 151, 154, and episode 82, which also featured fellow regular guest Jonathan Fowler of the podcast. Ash Burgess has a dusty degree in religious studies and an appetite for both high and low culture. She strives to celebrate the best of every season with her young children. Follow her on Instagram at Ash Burgess, all one word, and subscribe to her YouTube channel. And now on to the show. Well, welcome back to the Rob Burgess Show.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you back.
Yes, and also Happy Mother's Day.
Yes. I've said that several times today.
No, I know. I was just saying for your viewers, we are filming this on Mother's Day.
Yes.
Which I think is very appropriate because we're going to talk about a very mother-related topic.
Are you feeling very motherly this Mother's Day?
I'm feeling more motherly than ever.
Wow. It's, we've got quite a tale.
I think, yes, I feel like this is probably our most exciting episode yet. I mean, the last time we spoke, it was after we had found out that we were surprised by pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And for us, it did feel very surprising. For anyone who's interested in the details, we have that episode that we filmed. Mm-hmm. Or not filmed, but recorded. Mm-hmm. I also have a YouTube video that I filmed talking all about it. But to recap, for anyone who's not familiar, we struggled through infertility for 2 years before we had our first child. Mm-hmm. With our second, we did get pregnant right away when we wanted to, but it was still, a process. So we definitely thought that when we were ready to expand our family, we would need to push for it rather than have it just kind of occur, naturally. I keep wanting to say spontaneously. That's not really, spontaneous is totally not the
That makes
word.
me think of spontaneous human combustion, and that's not exactly what's going on here.
No, it's kind of the opposite.
It's like two people, not one.
But no, I guess what I'm just saying is that, so last time we spoke, we were talking about how we felt so surprised to be blessed with a surprise pregnancy when we didn't think that was something that could happen for us.
Yes. #blessed.
You have to include the hashtag, definitely.
I know, absolutely.
Yes. So now we're back.
Yes.
With a story about an even more exciting surprise that has occurred in our lives.
Yes. We only had one kind of situation to compare this to, so I think that colored how I was going into this because...
Well, and by situation, what you mean is how we thought that the birth was going to go.
Yes.
And what we thought the outcome would be, how we thought it was going to go, how we thought it would progress. Because with our first, we had, for medical reasons, a scheduled C-section. So I never even went into labor. Mm-hmm. I assume my labor would have, come a few days after whenever we scheduled the C-section. Who knows? We won't know. And then with our second, we had a VBAC, which, was something that was really important to me. I really wanted to have the VBAC, and happily I was able to achieve that. So we were basing a lot of our expectations and plans for this birth based on what happened in our previous birth, which I thought that I would, while I was in labor at home, I definitely wanted to labor at home as long as possible. Mm-hmm. Because I really didn't want to go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. I am already someone who doesn't want to go to the hospital.
Especially, yeah.
Well, especially now, but I mean, even in general, mm-hmm. I have medical anxiety. I don't like going to the doctor. I'll dread a doctor's appointment for weeks as it approaches, Mm-hmm. And that's under normal circumstances, but now there's the added fear of, getting exposed and getting sick.
Yeah.
At the hospital, or just the hospital being overwhelmed. There are so many reasons why right now is not a time when you want to go to the hospital, and also just the changing practices or whatever as far as what as a laboring or delivering mother you could even expect at the hospital as far as, will your partner be allowed to come to the hospital with you?
Mm-hmm.
If they have to leave for any reason, will they be able to come back? And will you be able to have visitors? Will you be able to have the birth that you wanted? And that, all of that was kind of up in the air as we approached really, the timing of our due date was very bad as far as the timeline of how the
peak of the
peak of the crisis, as far as it was just starting to hit to the point where I think society finally realized it was serious.
Mm-hmm.
But also it was just at the point where I feel like the hospital is just struggling to deal with it and figure out what to do. So every time I would talk to them about what was going to be happening,
it's a different answer.
There's a different answer because it keeps changing, and they're like afraid to tell you a solid answer because they know it might change. And of course I tried to be understanding of that because I knew that they were trying to do the best that they could, but it's also very frightening when it's like, we don't know what will happen if you somehow test positive while you're here. We don't know. We think that as of right now, your husband can come with you to the birth, but there have been other places where they've said that no one can come to the birth. And, as of right now, your kids and can't come to see you at the hospital, and no, you can't have any visitors or anything. And, so it's a changing thing where, there's fear of, like, what if you end up having to give birth alone?
That's a real possibility, and has happened.
It's happened to people during this time period. Mm-hmm. What if you have to give birth alone, or what if something happens and you end up being sick and then you end up being separated from your baby? Because that's also happened to people. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of concerns going into it, but on top of which just our normal concerns about, not really being thrilled about going to the hospital. But so there was that. But otherwise, we were mostly just planning to, have a birth, I think, similar to the birth last time, which we also did a podcast about. Yes. The birth of our second. So if anyone's interested in details, there's that. I also have a YouTube video about that. But just to give a brief recap, we had the VBAC. We did it, or I keep saying we, but it was me.
Give yourself credit. I was going to give you all the credit.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't know why I keep saying we. I guess it could mean me and our daughter, Emerald, because she was also part of the situation. Yes. She was living in me. She came out of me. That was, she was also doing things.
Oh, she did work.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was a lot of work for the baby, too. People don't ever talk about that, but I think being born probably is a lot of work for the baby.
Absolutely.
As well. As much as the laboring mother, you feel the contractions and everything, I'm sure it's a really... I don't know if the baby's in pain, but I'm sure it's an intense and maybe frightening experience for them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, descending through the birth canal, that has to be, kind of, incredible.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't really have words to, understand, no one's telling you what's happening to you, and you don't really maybe know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I digress. So what I'm getting at is that we were planning a similar birth to my prior VBAC in that we were going to try to labor at home as long as possible, which in our prior birth was a very long time. I was in
How long from beginning to end?
I mean, I feel like I was in labor for 5 days, but most of that was
5 days.
Most of that was the early stage of labor. Because I remember, I had a doctor's appointment on a Friday.
How was that different from Braxton Hicks?
The difference is that Braxton Hicks, if you change positions or drink some water or something, they stop. Actual contractions, I think...
You can drink as much water as you want.
Yeah, they're just going to keep going. If it's a real contraction, I think unless they maybe give you a shot of something in the hospital or something, I don't know if there's a way to stop them. And even then, I think sometimes that doesn't work. I'm not totally clear on that. But I was having very mild contractions for a long time. Because I had a doctor's appointment on a Friday. And at that point, I had a non-stress test. So they were able to see that I was having contractions. But it was they were barely noticeable to me at that point. And then throughout the next few days, I was feeling just a little bit crampy, but nothing super serious. Things really got going on Tuesday, and she was born on a Wednesday. On Tuesday, we did a lot that day. We went to a splash pad, and our son played. We went to Target and did some shopping. I made dinner. It took me 2 hours to make dinner because I kept pausing because I was having a contraction. I would And so at that point, it was like pretty serious labor. I mean, I think if it takes you 2 hours to cook dinner because you keep having to pause what you're doing because you're having a contraction, that's pretty serious. I had the picture that I wanted to put up before the baby came, and I remember you helped me put the picture up, and we had to stop halfway through because I was holding it so you could use a level, but I was like, a contraction hit, and I was afraid I was going to drop the picture on you. Mm-hmm. So these were like, that was, at that point, I mean, those are serious contractions. Serious enough that you wanted to, like, I think you were thinking we should just head to the hospital.
Yes, I wanted to speed away immediately.
You wanted to, like, speed to the hospital. And finally, after you, like, kept being like, we need to speed to the hospital, I finally called and talked to the doctor on call. And after talking them through, you know, how I was feeling, what was going on, they said, you know, you could come to the hospital now if you want to, but, you know, you could also try to stay home. See if you can sleep through the night, take a hot shower, you know, see if you can make it through the night and come in the morning. And that's what we ended up doing. So, as per my tradition, because the night before my C-section with our first, I watched the movie Clueless, which is my favorite movie. So as per that tradition, I watched the movie Clueless that night. I could barely watch it, though, because I was in so much pain. Like, I was having, like, really intense, serious contractions all night at the point where
How far apart were they during the night?
I don't know, maybe 7 minutes or something. I mean, do you remember?
I felt like it was like 10.
Yeah, maybe it was 10.
Maybe that was too long. I don't know. But
I don't remember exactly. I just remember that I was super uncomfortable and I could barely watch the movie.
Yeah.
And we already had the person that was coming to watch our oldest son, you know, come to our house that Tuesday night and stay the night, you know, in case we did have to speed away. Mm-hmm. We didn't end up having to speed away. We ended up leaving for the hospital. I think it was 9 in the morning when we finally, like, left our house. Mm-hmm. So we did make it through the night. I took a shower. I did my makeup, all the things that I was kind of planning to do. Mm-hmm. So that was what we were basing our timeline on, somewhat that experience. I hoped that my labor wouldn't be that drawn out. I wanted it to be a lot faster, but I still thought I'm going to labor at home as long as possible. I was planning to, when I went into labor, I had a list of last minute things I was going to pack in my bag and things I was going to do. I was going to, like, I was going to slice fresh fruits and vegetables to take to the hospital as, like, a snack. Mm-hmm. I was going to do my makeup for the labor and delivery video where I want it to be, you know, attractively and tastefully laboring and delivering.
In well-lit situations.
Well-lit and well-angled to...
Good backgrounds.
Yeah, to show me attractively laboring and delivering and not too much, you know...
gory details.
Yeah, not too many gory details. There's a lot of pictures from our daughter's birth that we can't show anyone.
Oh, but there's one that's really, really good, though.
Yes, there's one that's amazing, and that picture almost makes it worthwhile. But I am sad that we don't have more of my upper body.
Can we describe the picture, or is that too much? Okay. It's a good picture. Just trust me, it's a good picture.
It's a good picture that you will never ever see.
Personal use.
But I was hoping for more upper body shots of me attractively laboring and delivering.
Okay, but you have to understand my position here. How many times am I ever going to get to see that from that angle?
Yeah, but how many times will I ever get to see my face and my torso as I attractively labor and deliver?
Attractively?
Yes, attractively.
Okay.
So anyway...
I'm not that good with Photoshop.
Hey!
Anyone would be, like, giving birth, taking, like, making some faces that maybe they wouldn't normally.
Yes, but I think that you can film at the right moments to put together footage of yourself looking...
If you film a lot, I'm sure you can come away with something.
I don't think you have to show you don't have to show your worst moments.
You just leave those on the cutting room floor.
Yes.
Okay.
Fair enough. My thought was we would get to the hospital at a point where I was in labor enough to be at the hospital, but not so much that we weren't able to get some tasteful shots before things got too intense.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm saying if I could do give birth, I don't know that I would trust myself to look good during that at all.
Well, now I know that for me that might not be a possibility, but that's
neither
coming.
here nor there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, that was kind of the previous experience we were working with going into what we were planning for the birth. We were planning a pretty straightforward, quote unquote, natural hospital birth, where I had kind of discussed the possibility of pain medicine with my doctor, just because I was a little bit worried because, like, with this pandemic situation, they said now last time I labored in a tub for a long time at the hospital. And that was the thing that I think really allowed me to deal with the pain. Because I didn't get, any pain medicine last time.
Get out of the tub.
They kept making me get out of the tub to be monitored. Well, eventually they made me get out because I was too hot, But
that's when you were like, oh, this is good.
Yeah, that was when it was really good. But no, they kept making me get out to be monitored.
Yeah.
Which was something that I really hated.
That was annoying.
It was super annoying because the tub was like the only thing that I was like helping me to like hang on, and I had to keep getting out of the tub.
I didn't feel like the monitorings were useful. Like, I don't know, maybe they have to do that.
Well, and they do it more. The thing is that they would monitor you, I think they said once an hour or something, but because it was a VBAC, they wanted to do it like every half hour or every 45 minutes or something like that. Anyway, because, the thing is with the monitoring, the risk with the VBAC is that your uterus will rupture. Mm-hmm. And apparently if your uterus starts to rupture, the baby will go into distress. So the best first warning sign that they can get that your uterus is rupturing is that the baby would go into distress. So that's why they want to monitor you more. Mm-hmm. Which, is valid in the sense that if your uterus does rupture, that's like a catastrophic, life-threatening event. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the chances of your uterus rupturing are actually very low. Mm-hmm. Like, it's something like 2%. So anyway, that was annoying with, being monitored at the hospital and all that. But we were basically planning for the same situation of a fairly natural labor and delivery in the hospital. I was thinking I might consider some pain medicine this time, though, because if I wasn't allowed to use the labor tub, because what I was saying is that they told me that they might not have the tubs available because they were worried about being able to clean them and sanitize them between people. And that made me really worried, and I was thinking, I might end up getting the epidural, or I had talked with my doctor about other options, and they said I could possibly do IV medicine, which I think would be, they said morphine in my case. So that was something that I was considering, although I was still hoping not to do that. I was considering it just because I feel like the pain.
But we were going to be in a shower.
Yes, they said we could go in the shower, but honestly, the shower doesn't sound as good to me.
No.
Well, just because, I remember, with our second birth, I could barely stand up. I feel like even, on our way into the hospital, I feel like I could barely, walk into the hospital. Mm-hmm. So the idea of, standing in the shower did not sound very good to me. It's very far second choice from being in, the whirlpool tub. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we were planning a similar situation where we were going to try to stay home as long as we thought we could, and we were going to go to the hospital. I was hoping that things would move along more quickly in the sense that my ideal was that we were going to get to the hospital and then, give birth an hour later or something and not be there for a long time. I wanted to spend as little time as possible at the hospital, but we were still planning the basic timeline of laboring at home, going to the hospital, having the baby, all that. So
picking back up with our current situation, your due date was April 26th.
Yes. And I was really hoping, and that was a Sunday.
Yes.
So I was really hoping that I would have the baby that weekend.
And to preface this, you had a doctor's appointment on Monday.
I had a doctor's appointment scheduled for, was it Monday or was it Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday that my appointment was.
Tuesday.
I had an appointment scheduled for Tuesday, and I was feeling really nervous about my appointment because if I went to the appointment on Tuesday, it would mean obviously that I hadn't had the baby yet, which is pretty likely because, not that many people necessarily have the baby, on or by their due date. A lot of people go overdue. But I hate the feeling of pressure that I feel like starts to mount as soon as you are overdue. It seems to me like there's this immediate pressure of we want to check everything really carefully to make sure that you and the baby are in great health, which I mean that's obviously very valid, but it's still, there's this pressure of you're on the clock. I definitely felt that mounting pressure of because I really wanted to just go into labor and have the baby. I didn't want to get to the point where I was overdue enough that they start talking about, should we schedule an induction, or what's going to happen, or I hate the feeling of, like, you have to, like, take these next steps. So I was feeling like I just really want to have the baby, so then I don't have to worry about this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Can you say no?
To an induction?
Sure.
I mean, yeah. I mean, technically you can say no to anything. I think...
They can say they won't treat you also.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky situation because, yes, I mean, you obviously... It's not like they
it's your body still.
It's not like they can kidnap you and force you into the hospital to do the induction. But most doctors do have rules about how long they'll let you go, and that's somewhat influenced by your overall condition.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my doctor's office said that, like, generally, if you make it to 41 weeks, they then want to schedule an induction.
Mm-hmm.
But they also, as soon as you pass your due date, and I'm also technically a geriatric pregnancy.
It's such a harsh term.
It is a really harsh term, and I think they should change that too, because I feel like so many women are having babies in their 30s or their mid-30s.
And that doesn't even mean what it meant.
When I say geriatric pregnancy, I imagine I'm like
a miracle of science happened today.
Or like the thing I saw on TV once where a woman was the surrogate for her own daughter, so she was like the grandmother, but she carried the pregnancy even though she was like 60 years old or something. Oh, wow. That's what I think when I think like geriatric pregnancy. But anyway, technically after the age of 35, they consider you to be like an old person pregnancy, and I'm 35, so that contributes to the situation of them being like more concerned. Mm-hmm. And it's a VBAC, so they're more concerned, you know what I mean? So there's different issues that contribute to them being more cautious. Mm. If I was, like, 22 and had, like, had one successful delivery or something, I feel like they'd be, like, a little bit less, like, picky. But I feel like with it being a VBAC and with me being in my 30s instead of my 20s, it's like they're more, you know, they're a little bit more, like, cautious. In that they want to, as soon as you pass your due date, they want to do a non-stress test and make sure the baby's fine. They want to, like, do an ultrasound.
Do you think they're just looking for excuses to, like, say that you have to do it?
Maybe. I mean, I think it depends on the doctor.
You know what I mean? Like, if a job wants to fire somebody, but they don't have, like, a good reason, they'll just, like, start scrutinizing them, and it's like, you came in 5 minutes late yesterday. And
I think it depends. I mean? Like, yes, exactly. I do think it depends a lot on the doctor.
So your blood pressure's kind of high, Ash.
Well, the thing is, too, that the doctors that I was seeing, the way that the doctor's office works, it's a group. Mm-hmm. So you don't really have an individual doctor. It's like you rotate through all the different doctors. Mm-hmm. And the reason I picked them is that they were one of the few groups of doctors that I could find where they were all okay with doing a VBAC. Because a lot of them, there will be doctors that will do a VBAC, but then there's other doctors that won't, and then if the other doctor's on call, you can't have your VBAC, and I wasn't willing to take that kind of chance. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons I picked this doctor's office is that I wanted the doctors that were all fine with that. Yeah. Because I do feel like there are some doctors that really want to, like, push you into a C-section because it's easier for them, they can schedule it, and they make more money off of it. Mm-hmm. But I do feel like being in the situation where you rotate through doctors, different doctors, even in the doctor's office, have different approaches. Because you know what I mean? Like, there were some doctors that I talked to that were like, you know, we'll just have to see, you know, how you're doing. And other doctors are like, we should talk about next steps if you haven't had the baby by Monday or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like... it really depends, but it's just a stressful situation that I didn't really want to be in. Yes.
So anyway, it's Sunday. You haven't had the baby. We go on a very long walk.
Okay, so yeah, I figured, you know, that couldn't hurt to, like, shake the baby loose a little bit. Yeah. Plus, I wanted to get outside anyway to take some pictures, which we did. Which I'm really happy that we took those pictures.
Really couldn't have waited any longer.
Really getting in there. But that's really cool. I'm excited that we have pictures of, like, literally the pregnantest that I was.
Mere hours.
Yeah. So we took a walk, and I was actually feeling kind of down. Because I was feeling like, even though I had no reason to actually think that I would somehow have the baby on my due date, or maybe before, I was feeling discouraged.
Were you having any contractions at that point?
Well, in retrospect, I mean, maybe I must have been, but I don't really think so, no.
Not that you noticed at the
I didn't
time.
notice any I mean, I had noticed for, like, the last couple weeks random contractions, but I think those were more just Braxton Hicks, because those were just, like, comes and goes.
But if you get so close to your due date, is Braxton Hicks not a thing anymore?
I think it could still be a thing.
Still
I mean, as long as the contractions aren't, like, doing anything, or, like, picking up speed. Well, because there was that night, was it 2 nights before, maybe, when I told you I was having contractions? Yeah, because there was a couple nights before I was having contractions.
But then it just, like, seemed to stop.
But yeah, it was for several hours, though, I was having them enough that I felt fairly optimistic. Like, I thought, this could really be the beginning of labor. Like, I was having contractions, they seemed like they kept happening, and I felt like, this is happening. And then they just kind of evaporated, they just disappeared. So I thought, okay, well, that was just, a false alarm or whatever. But yeah, no, that day, I felt a little bit crampy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess those could have been just very light early contractions. But honestly, I had felt that kind of cramping with all my pregnancies at various points all the way through. And so to me, that was just the feeling of being super pregnant. And like, I feel like when you're 9 months pregnant, like when you're like literally like the pregnantest, it's the one time in your life when you can, without feeling bad about it, describe yourself as lumbering. Like, I feel like I like lumbered along on our walk. Like, I really was going slow, you know what I mean? Yes. So I felt like,
as pregnant as a pregnant person can be.
Exactly. So the amount of crampiness that I was feeling to me was on par with just being so pregnant that you kind of slowly lumber on your evening walk, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, I might be in labor.
Very far for...
Yeah, we walked pretty far, but still, I didn't feel like it was like... I did not think I was in labor. In fact, I texted updates, too, because a couple people, like, knew that it was my due date, and so texted to check on me and see how I was doing. And a couple other people I texted just to be like, just to kind of update them and be like, yeah, no baby yet. It doesn't, no sign that she's coming. Like, basically, like, I literally, like, texted, like, probably, like, 5 people to be like, yeah, it doesn't seem like the baby's gonna be showing up anytime soon, And then I was feeling discouraged. I don't know why I was feeling so discouraged when I wasn't even like I was overdue. It was just, like, my due date, and there's one detail we kind of forgot to mention, which is the thing you found while we were on our walk.
Oh, I found a 4-leaf clover.
And it was giant, too.
It's huge.
Like, it was so giant, I almost wonder if it was, like, genetically altered or something. Like, it was enormous.
Yeah, it was insane.
Like, it was, like, almost like the size of, like, a person's hand or something.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was a really big 4-leaf clover. It was really
catcher's
exciting.
mitt.
Yeah.
It's not big, but...
It was big. It was significant. It was a significant clover.
It's the biggest one I've ever found.
Yeah. But anyway, so, so to answer your question, no, I did not think that I was having contractions or in labor at all, and I felt discouraged about it, and... So...
Then you made tacos, right? Or was that the night before?
It was... which night was it that we had tacos?
I think you might have made them that night on Sunday.
Did we? That's so funny. Well, because you had asked...
Did you not realize that?
I knew I made it that weekend, but I couldn't remember which day.
We were going to make it Saturday, and I think you ended up making it Sunday night.
Okay. That's really funny, because we had tacos, I made tacos, tacos were the meal that took me 2 hours to cook when I was in labor with Emerald. But this time I made tacos because...
And we hung some pictures, as I remember.
But the pictures I wanted to hang because... Well, I was planning to labor in our tub for a few hours while we were slowly laboring at home, so we didn't have to, go to the hospital too soon. I was planning to labor in our tub for a while. And I wanted to labor in, like, a tastefully decorated room. So
I think the part of your brain where the picture hanging lives and where, like, here comes the baby soon. I think they like vibrate against each other.
It's just that I am more comfortable when things look the way I want them to look.
And then things can commence.
Yes. And so I knew I would be more comfortable laboring at home if I was laboring in a tastefully decorated bathroom. So there were some pictures that I've been meaning to hang since we moved in here, and I got them hung a few days. That was a few days before that I got that done.
I mean, you were kind of bummed because you didn't want to go to your doctor's appointment.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, is that the weekend was coming to a conclusion, so it was already like I had like a case of the Sundays. Mm-hmm. Like I think the Sunday scaries is what some people call it.
For sure.
where it's like you're kind of not looking for, and I don't like to call it that because I like to be excited about what I like. I like to think about like, not like, oh man, this week is coming up. I like to think about like what we get to do, like we get to be alive and like do things the next week. But still, sometimes it is kind of a bummer when the weekend comes to an end. Mm-hmm. And I was definitely feeling that like it's a bummer the weekend's coming to an end, and I have this looming doctor's appointment that I don't want to go to. Mm-hmm. So I was like feeling kind of blah. I stayed up kind of late. Mm-hmm. I like had a cup of tea and a snack, mm-hmm. and I was like watching YouTube videos, mm-hmm. and then I went to bed around midnight, maybe like 12:30.
Mm-hmm. And then at what did you say, 1:15?
Well, it was slightly before 1:15 that I woke up. It was 1:15 that I really realized that things were happening.
Is that when you woke me up?
No, I woke you up maybe a half an hour after that.
It's like 1:45?
Yeah, probably. 1:30? Okay. Well, let's back up to what happened, right. At 1:15 or right before. So I went to bed.
You were asleep for 45 minutes maybe.
And then I was awoken by a sharp pain. Like a pain, acute enough that it woke me up from being asleep. Mm-hmm. And it was pain, and I thought, that's weird. I didn't immediately think I must be in labor, mm-hmm. because I've had sharp pains before when pregnant, like sometimes just like rolling from one side to the other, and it's like, I don't know, like your placenta gets like not twisted, but like, your body feels weird when you're pregnant. Sometimes in the night, if you shift positions, you feel a pain. So being awoken and not knowing what had preceded the pain, I kind of just thought, a pain. And I went back to sleep, and then I was awoken by the pain again. And so and that's when I thought, this could be like the start of something.
Just the beginning. How far apart were these at this point?
Well, at that point I didn't know because I had felt one and I had gone back to sleep and then felt another. So I had no idea how long it was between the first one and the second.
When you started timing?
When I started timing, so I started timing at 1:15 because I had my phone on my bedside table, mm-hmm. so I picked up my phone and I wrote down what time it was. Probably at the second one was 1:15 because that was when I thought, I should probably start timing these and see what's happening. Mm-hmm. So
because it seemed like they came.
I think when I started timing them, it basically seemed to me like they were already 5 minutes apart.
I think by the time you had me look at that list, I was like, I was like, these are very close.
Well, that was the thing is that, okay, so at 1:15, so like the second contraction, I started timing them. And then after I'd written down a few, I was looking at it and I was like, these are like incredibly close together. Like, so that's when I woke you up.
Okay. You woke me up. Honestly, okay, you wake me up. Here's what I'm thinking. I was ready to go back to sleep, to be honest.
Like, no, I know that. You don't have to be honest about it. Like, I knew that you were ready to go back to sleep. So I wake you up at 1:45, and I said, I think I'm really in labor. Like, I'm having contractions. I'm going to go take a bath. And
part of me was like, okay, Ash.
Yeah, no. So I was like, I'm going to go take a bath. And I kind of thought, there's a possibility that I'll take the bath and, like, the contractions will stop. Or something, you know what I mean? Or if this is labor, like we said, my plan was to labor in the tub at home for a long time. So either way, I was like, going to take a bath. So I went to take the bath. I was not in the bath very long because I kept having like really intense like these were like really intense. And they were different than the contractions that I had with Emerald. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, like I said, I think I mentioned before that I had back labor with her. So that was like pain sort of radiating through from your back. And I didn't feel like, once the contractions with her got super intense, I didn't feel like there was a break between them. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was just kind of like the imagery that I would use is like, you've seen surely imagery of like a boat on a rocky cliff and like the waves are crashing into the boat and the boat is just being like rammed repeatedly, mm-hmm. Against the cliff and there's kind of no respite for the boat. Mm-hmm. That was how I felt when I was having really intense back labor, in the last probably day before we had Emerald. Mm-hmm. these were different in that I think these were more traditional contractions, like I guess front labor, like just regular labor. I'm just searching for another word for them, but these were, I think, more traditional contractions in the sense that there was a break between them, and like I would feel the contraction coming on, and I would feel it going, and I would feel it, while it was happening. But while they were happening, and they were happening very frequently, they were incredibly intense. And the frequency was really what got to me. So I was only in the tub, I think, through a couple contractions before I was like, okay, this is happening really, really fast. So I got out, and I woke you up. And I remember feeling like a little bit annoyed because you were like back to sleep. And I woke you up, and I could tell that you were annoyed that I was like waking you up. But I was like, you need to like call the person that's coming to watch our kids because, I think this is like really happening. And I need you to help me time these to like see if I'm like, because I almost thought like maybe I'm like delusionally thinking these are closer together than they really are. Like even though I was writing it down, I just was like, it was happening so fast.
But in my defense, I thought we had more time. Yeah,
so did I, but that's why when I began to think we didn't have more time, I was like, almost didn't believe it. That's why I asked you to help me, like, because I asked you to come back with me to the bathroom because I wanted to get back in the tub, but I wanted you to time the contractions because I couldn't believe that
4 minutes apart, maybe.
Yeah, but this wasn't like a long time later. This was like just minutes.
No, this is like this is when I started timing.
But was it like 2:00 or something? Like it wasn't even like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like not that much time had passed, but somehow it was
things were moving.
Things were moving very quickly. So I was like I was just in the tub, and we called the person that was going to come and watch our kids, but they live about 2 hours away. So
also, it's like the middle of the night, and they're like, "Do I have time to shower?"
Okay, well, that's the thing is that when they asked if they had time to shower, I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, maybe. But what I actually meant by that was, honestly, at that moment, I think I knew that they were not going to be there in time. So I kind of meant maybe in the sense that, like, it doesn't really matter whether you shower or not. You're not going to get here. At that point, I hadn't actually said that out loud to you. So I think we were still working off of the idea that we were going to be going
So did you
to the hospital.
consciously think that something other than a hospital birth was in store for us?
Not going into this, but I think at the moment...
At that moment when you said that.
At the moment when I said maybe to the question of do you have time for shower, what I'm saying is at that moment I think I actually knew that we weren't going to the hospital. Like, at that moment, I think, when I thought about... Because I thought about it for a second before I answered, do I think that they have time to shower? And what I honestly concluded was, like, it doesn't matter whether they shower or not. I don't think they have time... Like, even if they don't shower, I don't think they have time to get here, so they might as well shower, because,
sure.
like, either way...
shower, and why not?
It was like, either way, it's not actually going to be happening.
Brush your teeth while you're at it.
Yeah, and that's that's just, so I think that was the moment when I, in my mind, calculated out how fast it felt like things were happening and thought to myself, we're not going to make it to the hospital. I didn't say that to you. Because we were still, I mean, the only plan that we had was the plan that included us going to the hospital. So I think we were both sort of committed to just staying on that track. So you were, like, loading up the car.
Oh, yeah, I had bags that were going out to the car.
And you were like, I don't even know what you were doing out here. Whatever it was that you were doing. I mean, this is your part of the story. What were you doing out here?
It all happened so fast. No, I was just putting stuff in the car. I had cleaned the car out the day before. There was a spare tire that needed to be placed back inside the wheel well. I think our son got up at one point, so I think I invited him to start watching a movie.
Yeah, I think you put was it Monsters University?
Yes, which is like one of his favorite movies.
Yeah, which normally if he wakes up in the night, we like take him back to bed. Normally we don't say, you can sit in the living room and watch Monsters University.
So. But I was like, hey, do you want to watch a movie? He's like, yeah. I was like, that never happens. Of course he wants to watch a movie. So he starts watching a movie, and then you start making some sounds that kind of like told me that.
Well, okay.
I think that's the moment I was like, I didn't think all the next steps all the way through to what would.
To like, we're not going to the hospital, but you just knew that things were progressing. Well, because you said that the last time you heard me make sounds like that was when we were about to have our daughter.
Yes.
Our first daughter.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and so going back to my side of the story, so. Yeah, I was making some sounds. I mean, I think there's a point in labor where you just gotta do what you need to do, mm-hmm. and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think about how I've concluded that tragically, even if I had time to do all the things that I planned to do, where I was going to like do my makeup and everything, so I could get footage of myself tastefully laboring, I'm not certain that I'm ever going to get footage like that, because even if I was able to do my makeup while I was in labor and like set up the camera, once the labor really gets going, I'm just not sure if it's like going to be a tasteful experience for me. And maybe the difference here is that most of the videos that I showed you were people that got like an epidural, so they're more like sweating, and their husband is like their husband is like mopping the brow, their brow, and like. I
bet they're a little more serene.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're still experiencing, a very intense situation.
Not like Morticia Addams or anything,
But I would say that my experience of labor pain without pain medicine is that it's beyond anything that I had ever previously, like having experienced pain of other kinds previously mm-hmm. in my life. I would say that labor pain is far beyond any other sort of pain that I've experienced, and I don't think it's possible to fully describe or imagine unless it is like happening to you. That's just my experience. I know different people have different experiences. Like some people experience it as being not as painful, and some people I'm sure experience it as being more painful.
Yes, I would say as an observer, someone who's never experienced this pain, I would say the word animalistic definitely figures into it.
Very animalistic. I would even say that
like there's some primal things
I've never felt more like an animal or thought more about the fact that people are just animals mm-hmm. than I have while laboring or while contemplating what it was like to be laboring. Like, well, I do think that
our son was worried.
Yeah, our son was worried, and that was one thing, is that even though I was in this very animalistic, primal state, I was still conscious of the fact, like I knew he was out there. Mm-hmm. I'd heard him woken up, and you told me that he was watching the movie. I was worried that he was going to be worried, mm-hmm. but there wasn't anything I could do about it.
No, I don't think you can think about that thing.
It was the kind of thing where I was worried about it, but I also wasn't really able to like mitigate the situation.
No.
But I do think it's very animalistic. I mean, if you've ever seen an animal giving birth, and then you've ever given birth, you will feel like you have a certain kinship with every other animal that's given birth. Like there are similarities to what I've experienced physically, and then what I've seen other animals experiencing. Mm-hmm. I will say something that I think that is of note, as far as my experience of this, is that even though we were planning a hospital birth, I've attended a home birth before. Like as a child, like I saw my sister born, so I've seen a person born before.
But you,
and I was all but I guess what I'm saying is that I think that the situation would have been frightening in a way that it wasn't to me if I had never seen anyone give birth or given birth myself. Mm-hmm. But luckily, I had previously given birth, so I had some baseline to know what that experience was like. Therefore, I could probably know if it was going significantly worse than a previous time. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if I had not given birth before, and then I found myself in a situation where I was giving birth without any sort of a skilled attendant, I wouldn't know if what I was experiencing was an acceptable amount of pain, or if, this was a sign that I was dying or something. So I'm saying, I think fortunately I'd given birth before. Also, fortunately, I've seen people give birth before. Mm-hmm. And I've seen animals give birth before. I think that gave me a good baseline. I've also read a little bit about birthing and home birth, because even though we had decided on a hospital birth, I've been interested in home birth, and I've read, a little bit about it before, and I think that prepared me in some ways, which we can get into, as we talk more about what's going to happen next. So anyway, I'm making some sounds. As I was making the sounds, and now I realized that it didn't sound this melodic, but I kind of was envisioning. I was kind of envisioning sort of like, in Frozen 2, that like weird voice that Queen Elsa hears calling her out into the wilderness.
Into the unknown?
Yes, I was kind of imagining something along those lines. Yes, we've watched that movie a lot recently.
Yeah. There was definitely some melodious nature to the sounds you were making.
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking as I was making the sounds.
You seemed like you were tapping into something, and it was just kind of like coming forth, and yeah.
So at that point, you're like loading the car. I'm making noises. Our son is out here trying to watch Monsters University.
Okay, so.
And then, do we want to go? I mean, I can tell you what I think happens next.
Well, I mean, okay, so I think you realized maybe what was happening.
Okay.
And so this is
there's a detail we almost forgot that I'm going to back up and share.
Okay.
Right? So you had asked me, this was before I started making the noises. Before we were at the point where I'm, in the tub making the noises. When I was in the tub after you had called about, somebody coming to watch our kids, and also you had called the doctor's office and told them, that we were headed in as soon as somebody got there. You had asked me to get out our birth plan.
Yes.
And because there were certain things in our birth plan that I had wanted you to kind of review, because there were some things that were important to me that I wanted you to kind of be in charge of making sure certain things happened or didn't happen in a certain way, because I kind of was like, I'll be busy, but it's kind of your job to be like advocating for these certain things that we wanted, both for myself and for the baby. So anyway, you had asked me to get it out because I had it packed in my hospital stuff because you wanted to look it over.
Mm-hmm.
So while you were loading up the car, I got out of the tub to get the birth plan out. I think that was really when I realized that things were absolutely serious, because I thought, okay, at that point in my mind, I was like, the contractions are 5 minutes apart. Yet, in the time that it took me to get out of the tub and walk probably 10 feet to where my hospital bag was and dig out the birth plan from like where it was, I was hit by like another contraction. So that's definitely less than 5 minutes is what I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
And it was like a contraction that was like so intense that I like, I was like completely like floored by it. Like I almost like wondered if I was going to make it back to the bathtub. And in retrospect, I think that might be when my water started to break, because at that moment, this is going to sound like super gross. This is like embarrassing, but I had like a little bit of liquid trickle down the side of my leg. But at the time, I kind of thought, maybe that's my water starting to break, or maybe I've just slightly peed myself. And honestly, either one seemed just as plausible to me in that moment, because I didn't really think that my water would break like that. Because with Emerald, our older daughter, I mean, you remember how you said that when my water broke, it was like a gunshot.
Yes. Like
it was very loud and very sudden, and it all came out at once, and it was unmistakable. So after that, I was like, "There's no mistaking it." Because funnily enough, I remember with Emerald, when I was in labor, I wanted to take a bath, but I was afraid to, because I was like, "What if my water breaks and I don't know it?" And then after I had her, I was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have been afraid. I would never have my water break and not know it."
But then,
and of course, I've been proven wrong.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I thought, because it was like a shot, and then all of it came rushing out all at once, and it was very dramatic. So I assumed that was what it would be like this time. So I kind of thought, no, I probably just, grossly. But I mean, I say grossly, but it's like I was in enough pain and having bad enough contractions that the idea of slightly peeing myself didn't seem like surprising or even that alarming. It was kind of like, well, that happened. And it wasn't like a lot. It was just like a little bit of moisture. So I'm thinking maybe my water just started to leak at that moment. But anyway, at that point I got back in the tub and was thinking like, okay, I was like barely able to complete that very simple task of getting something out of my bag. So like, I knew at that point that I wasn't going to be able to do any of the things that I thought I was going to do, like preparing snacks and doing my makeup and, let alone probably going to the hospital. So anyway, jumping back forward to, shortly after, I think is probably when I started making the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then, at a certain point, so I'm sitting there in the tub, and at a certain point, I had been feeling like a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Just, obviously in like the lower uterine area.
In sort of the birth canal area, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that.
Would you pinpoint it there? Okay.
So at a certain point, I remember thinking like, I kind of feel like her head is just like right there between my legs.
Okay, because I think... Do you
feel
what I
like before
remember.
that was when you came in and you saw my stomach change shape?
Here's what I remember. All right, so I'm loading the car.
Mm-hmm.
You get out to get the birth plan. I remember taking a picture of the birth plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came in and checked on you because you were making some pretty serious noises in the tub. And your entire...
Was that when my torso changed shape?
Yes.
Okay,
because...
so when that happened, I remember I heard a small, strange noise, and I felt almost like a release. And
Right.
I think that must have been when my water broke for real. Even though at the time I didn't really think my water broke, I just thought like, okay, she's like descending into the birth canal. Because yes, my stomach changed shape like dramatically, like before our eyes.
Yeah, like the lower pelvis definitely had a head type quality to the shaping of it all of a sudden, and the upper part was like, things had changed.
There was like a person outline, basically.
There was like a person
putting on their goggles and their like little scarf.
Yeah, like Snoopy.
Yes, I don't know why I pictured them dressed in like a Snoopy outfit for descending into the birth canal.
Right,
yes,
yeah.
I don't know why I pictured that, but but yes, okay, that happened.
And I think I went out one more time.
And then you went back out because I think for some reason we still thought we were going to the hospital.
I don't know what I was thinking.
I feel like we should have known that we were not going to the hospital by then. But I think for some reason we were just.
I still thought I had time.
I think we just didn't have.
I do remember thinking.
So we were just.
I remember thinking, okay, well, her stomach has changed shape. I don't know how she's going to get the seatbelt over that comfortably.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, comfortably was not a word that was in my vocabulary at that time anyway. So, I don't know, at a certain point I think you can be so uncomfortable that there's really nothing worse that can happen to you. I don't know.
But anyway, apparently I still thought that a hospital visit was in our future.
Yeah, so while you were outside...
So this is where it gets real.
Yeah. While you were outside, I was feeling like a lot of lower pressure to the point where I really thought to myself, like, I kind of just feel like her head is like coming out between my legs. But part of me still, even though I think at that point, like I said, I had a long time ago already kind of thought to myself, we're not going to the hospital, like back when I was like, sure, take a shower. Like, I think I knew at the same time, I didn't actually think her head was coming out. Because with Emerald, our older daughter, I remember I had been so concerned about as far as like what the pain of childbirth was going to be. I was so concerned that the most painful part was going to be the pushing stage. Mm-hmm. And then that ended up not being true. I feel like the contractions were much worse. The pushing wasn't really the most painful part, but I remember it was difficult. Like I remember with her, when I had felt an incredibly intense urge to push. And then I pushed, but I remember feeling like it's like the feeling of you've hit a brick wall, like there's no give for a second. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really feel like the ring of fire, I just felt like there's no give, I've hit a wall. So I kind of thought there would be more work involved in getting the baby's head, down and out. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wasn't expecting the top of her head to just kind of be there. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of cool because that was one thing I didn't do with Emerald is I didn't reach down and touch her head when it was coming out. Because with her, I was laboring kind of I was like on all fours, kind of like on the hospital bed. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this case, I was in the tub, so I was like sitting in the bathtub. And I thought, wow, that really feels like there could just be a head between my legs. So I reached down, sort of expecting to have it not actually be the case. Just because, I mean, that doesn't usually happen, that there's a head between your legs suddenly. So I reached down, and as soon as I reached down, I was like, yep, that's a head. Like, I just felt like very slick, and I felt like her hair, and she was like right there, like she was like sticking out. So then I called.
How long would you say from that moment until when I came in?
Okay, well, at that moment, and interestingly, I wasn't worried at all. I was very calm. I just thought, okay, she's coming out now. Like, I just knew that, and it's interesting.
This is
like,
just happening.
Yeah, it's just happening. I wasn't like scared or anything. I was just kind of like, well, this is what's happening. But I immediately, as soon as I felt down there and was like, yes, that's definitely a head, I immediately called you. I was like, Rob, and I was like, I called you, I think, a few times before you like heard me and came in, because I think you were like outside and then you came inside or something. So you came in, and then this is the moment that I most wish I had like a video of, just because. Have you ever seen I think one of the most interesting things that can happen in human life is when you see someone's face totally change based on like new information or like or new understanding being achieved. I think that's one of the most interesting moments, and so I really wish that we had that on camera.
Sure.
Because so I called you in, you came in, and I said, she's coming, and I could tell from your face that when I said that, you thought initially that what I meant was she's going to be here soon, which is like obvious. Like, this is not new information. Like, we know she's coming.
Yeah,
like,
I know. I'm loading the car.
Have you just now concluded that? And then I think I saw your face change as you, because I think I was like, I don't know, did I gesture towards the head or what did I say? Like,
I just kind of just looked. I don't know if you gestured or if I just looked down, but
I just remember seeing your face change from when I initially said she's coming, and I could see that you kind of were like, yeah, big news, you know what I mean? To, I could see the dawning realization in your face that I meant, like, literally at this moment, she is coming out. Because because as soon as I felt that was her head, I called you, because, like, I kind of, once I felt that her head was there, was like, I'm just going to go ahead and push her out. Like, to me, it wasn't really optional. Like, I felt the urge to push, and so it was just kind of happening. I mean, obviously, it was just kind of happening because somehow she got all the way down there. But I wanted to wait for you to get there. So you're there, and I saw that moment where you realized that I meant, like, literally at this moment she's coming out.
Yeah, so I look down and there's a head. Like, there's definitely a head. I can see the top of the head. I can see the eyes. I can see part, like, halfway of the ear. It was like half a head. Like, so
it was like a whole half a head, because I couldn't actually see at this point. I'm only going.
There was probably more out than I could see, because I couldn't see.
My legs and stuff.
It wasn't the greatest angle, but like I could see. I mean, her whole head probably was like sticking out of the birth canal. I just couldn't probably see.
Well, I didn't know, because I mean, to me, I just thought it was like the top of her head.
I think it was like, if I had to guess, I'm doing my upper cheekbone to like the middle of my ear. Okay. That's about to be, yeah. So I was like, okay, this is happening. So I remember I threw the keys that were in my hand in the tub, or not.
You didn't throw them in the tub.
Not the tub. No, not the whale of the tub.
Oh yeah, no, we had like a small child bathtub in there that we had from our previous kids when they were babies that we
now filled with like bath
store
toys.
Like the bath toys in there. It's kind of hard for me to like get rid of that.
Yeah,
it's not very good.
Anyway, I threw my keys in there. I had a hoodie on. I quickly shed that. I ran over. I remember I stuck my hands.
Well, I remember you. I feel like you stuck your hands in the water, and then I don't know. Did you say like, what should I do, or did I just say I'm going to push her out now? Because I remember I said just support her. Because I remember I had a moment.
Because like, you didn't want her to hit her head.
I didn't want her to hit her head, but I had this moment when you stuck your hands in where I was slightly worried that you were going to try to like pull her out or something. Which I know you weren't going to do that, but my body cringed just like thinking about it. Because I remember at that moment when I knew she was sticking out, I remember thinking like, I know that I'm going to push her out like within the next couple of minutes, and I know I'm going to tear, and it's going to hurt really bad. Mm-hmm. But it was the same type of thought where it's like, when you think something, And it's like a very serious thought, but you're not like afraid. You're like calm.
Mm-hmm.
I felt totally calm about that. But then for some reason, when you stuck your hands in the water, I was like, just support her. Because I just wanted you to like make sure, because I was really worried that like I was going to push and she was going to come like shooting out. Because Emerald shot out. Like.
Yeah, but you were elevated and it was like you said, you were on all fours and like...
True, but yeah, because when we had Emerald, it's like...
different...
When I pushed her out, she came out like so fast. She was like
I actually think this was like a better angle for like if I had to like catch it. I would actually be more worried about dropping somebody from the angle that Emerald was at.
She tumbled out, like, and poop sprayed
everywhere.
Like,
it was crazy, but like.
But no, with this, it was more like she was just coming out, like
just
kind of easing out.
Yeah, she actually.
I mean, easing is the wrong word because this was like the worst pain I've ever felt. But the way she was coming out was pretty like it wasn't like too fast. But I was afraid that when I pushed, she was gonna like fly out and like hit her head on the tub.
But somehow I felt like I had a good sense of where she was gonna go when she like did come out, so I wasn't really worried about that. My main concern was that I couldn't tell how she was.
Well, I think
because she's under the water. I mean, obviously her like nose and mouth aren't out yet. I know babies don't start breathing underwater or in the birth canal.
Well, that was the thing that scared me because
but I couldn't see her moving either.
Even at that time, I don't think she was moving. I think she was just concentrating on coming out. But
yeah.
Even at that time, like I remembered having read that when you have a water birth, the baby doesn't start breathing until when they come out of the water. I think it's the temperature change that signals to them. I think it's the temperature change that signals to them that they should start breathing. So when they go into the warm water, they don't actually start breathing and drown. But for some reason, I had this moment of panic where I was thinking, like, what if that's not true? And what if she's, like, drowning right now? You know, especially because it was, like, her head had, obviously come out, sort of, I don't want to use the word easy, but it kind of came out easily. But then I felt like her shoulders, that was where I felt like there was like no give. Like I felt like I was going to have to really, really push to get her shoulders out. And I felt that was the only moment when I felt scared because I suddenly thought, what if she's drowning? Like even though I know that she supposedly is not breathing, but yeah, you're right. It's like she just seemed like kind of like a gray lump of person.
It was, that was like the only scariest thing. I wasn't really worried about not catching her or dropping her really because I felt like I had that under control. I felt like you were doing a good job of pushing her out. It's just I couldn't tell how she was.
Well, and I hadn't been worried about her the whole time I was in labor because the whole time that I was in labor up until like this part where she's like actually coming out, when she was up in my belly, she was still kicking and moving around and like I could like feel her the whole time. So I knew she was okay. But then suddenly she's just like this just sort of big human chunk that's like halfway out of me, and I'm like, that was when I was like worried, so I thought, okay, I need to just push her out as fast as I can. And you were there to catch her, so I knew that she wasn't gonna like fly out and like hit her head or anything. So I think I just at that point just pushed really, really hard, and like then she just all kind of came out, didn't she?
Oh yeah, she. And you wasn't like too long.
And you just like scooped her.
Yeah, I grabbed her and pulled her up out of the water. I think you told me not to pull too far because the placenta had yet to come out.
Yeah, I mean, the placenta had yet to come out, so I mean, she was still attached, so there was like a weird umbilical cord going from her to me, so I was like, don't like stretch it or anything. But you just like...
I was just trying to get her up out of the water, but as soon as she was up out of the water, I could see that she was moving.
She immediately, I think she started moving, breathing. And she immediately, it was amazing how fast she changed colors.
Yeah, her color looked good.
Like, she immediately just, like, turned pink from, like, being more of, like, a... Just, like, was she kind of a... What color would you describe her as? Kind of like a light purple or something?
Yeah, that's probably good.
And she just, like, turned very pink.
She pinked up pretty quickly, and... Yeah, I wasn't... Honestly, like, as soon as she came out of the water, I wasn't really worried anymore. Like, I knew that she would be fine, honestly. Like, from that moment on, I was totally comfortable. Like, I handed her...
Yeah, you put her on my chest, and I remember I looked at her, and, like, I immediately noticed that she has a mole on her ear.
And
then you, I mean, I think then you called 911.
I immediately called 911. I mean, I just had to call. And then, I think is the woman still on the phone with us when I brought Cap in?
I don't know, when did you bring him? Surely you called 911 before you brought him in.
Okay, so my recollection is...
No, because you left the phone in there with me, and the woman was like, hello? Okay. So you called 911. Okay. The least helpful... And this is interesting because all the other people that we encountered later were super helpful. Mm-hmm. This person, the 911 operator was like, dispatch or whatever, was like the least helpful person ever.
I feel like she was reading from a script that they gave her that I feel like a computer program popped up for what to do when someone calls and tells you they just delivered their own baby. And I think what they wrote this for was like, you are in a disaster and we cannot get to you in the next 5 minutes. You're going to have to do some things that we would normally do if we could come quickly. We cannot come quickly.
Yes.
So you need to start doing extra
But it was like
things.
She was fixated on this one detail about how she wanted you to... She wanted you to take a string from the hood of your sweatshirt.
String or your yarn.
And she kept being like, do you have the string from a hood of a sweatshirt? No. She's imagining that you're this hooded sweatshirt person that's delivering your own baby. And it's first of all, I'm not even wearing a hoodie. Second of all, the interesting thing was that, aside from having, seen births before and read a little bit about home birth just for interest reasons, we had a birth book that I remember I had read a chapter in the birth book about, what to do if you emergency deliver your own baby. And it said specifically, unless you're in a disaster and you don't think help is coming for hours, don't try to immediately tie off the umbilical cord or cut it. And I feel like this woman immediately was get a string out of your sweatshirt, tie the cord off. And I feel like the next thing she was going to tell you was to find a pair of kitchen shears and hack through the umbilical cord, which... Basically, it's the situation where you're not going to do the thing the person's telling you to do because you know it's bad advice. But she was so insistent. She was like, are you looking for the string? I swear she said, are you looking for the string several times? And then you left the phone and you went, and that's, I think, when you went and got our son.
Well, I came in and got him and I said, you want us to come see the baby? And I do thankfully have this moment on video. When he came in and he was so surprised because we had been preparing him for so long about how, we're going to go to the hospital and when we come, we're going to have the baby and when we come back, we'll be bringing the new baby home and that's when you can see her. So he was really expecting that to happen because we've been really, because you're supposed to prepare kids for what's going to happen. So he was very prepared for the timeline of us going to the hospital. Mm-hmm. So it was a huge surprise for him and I think he was really excited that he got to see her. Oh, yeah. And at that moment, after he had come in and he had seen her for a second...
And I think he said, I thought she was going to come out of the hospital.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, we all did. But yeah, he got to see the baby, he said, in the red with the...
Yeah, he said to me later when we were talking about it, he said, I saw the baby with you in the tub and there was some redness in the water. And there was a little bit. There wasn't actually, I was kind of surprised there wasn't as much blood as you would admit. I think because the placenta, I think if I had delivered the placenta in the tub,
yeah, there
would have been more. But I think that just with the baby, not that much blood apparently comes out.
But then...
immediately, I think at that point... was when the first responders started showing up.
Well, the first person to show up was the policewoman.
There was a very tattooed policewoman.
Yeah.
Who, didn't she come kind of bursting in?
Well, the door was still unlocked for me, taking stuff out to the car. Mm-hmm. So she, poked her head in and was like, hello, and I was I gestured a big wave, come this way. And she, ran from the front door to the back. And I don't know if she was, expecting to find, some sort of horrific scene or something, but she just seemed so relieved when she realized that everything was basically fine.
Yeah, so I think she was just the first responder, wanted to make sure that no one was dead or something had
meth
gone
lab
hard.
had exploded or something.
Yeah, we're regular safe law abiding people that have accidentally given birth in our house.
Only
we're not
weird thing about us
crystal
is that
meth tweakers that didn't seek prenatal care and then we're oh my god. So
I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant.
Yeah, we're regular people that just have been overtaken by events.
But yeah, she was all right. She I could tell like she wanted to hug me, but she wasn't supposed to because it's like not time for like a pandemic hug or whatever.
Right.
But she was like, she just kind of grabbed my shoulder, was like, all right. Like,
I'm sure she was also relieved that nothing, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure when you burst into a situation like that, you're prepared for the possibility it's going to be something terrible or sad. So I'm sure she was also just thrilled that
just
it was
happy,
it seems like the situation is working out well.
This is all working out. So she was first through the door, and then I think the entire, like you said, the cast of the Village People came through.
Yeah, I mean, there was like some firefighters. It's kind of a blur to me, so I don't remember exactly who everyone was. But there were firefighters, paramedics, police officers. I don't know who else.
So anyway, at that point...
So they, unlike the super unhelpful...
As soon as the policewoman came in, I hung up on the 911 person.
Yeah, because...
I think you're justified, because I think the rule is, I think, they have to stay on the phone with you until someone shows up.
Yes, but it's like...
But
now
once someone shows up, this is
out
out of your hands. We've got this. There are people on scene.
But I'm glad that we didn't follow her advice, because the, I guess it's the paramedics, though, the ambulance people.
Yes.
They obviously had,
they had sterile tools.
They had, like a what's a scalpel?
Sterile scalpel.
And like they had clamps.
They had clamps.
And they also they checked the cord. They wanted to make sure it had stopped pulsing before they cut it. Unlike the 911 woman who was like, tie it off immediately. They were like, is it still pulsing? Should we wait a minute?
Well, I brought that up with the 911 person. She was like, sorry, I'm trying to help you.
Like, oh my god. Yeah, but the thing is that I had remembered in our birth book it said, even if you weren't, because I know some people do delayed cord clamping in the hospital anyway, but even if that's not, something you were planning to do, they said if you accidentally deliver at home, wait until it stops pulsing because the baby's still getting oxygen from the cord for, I think they said a couple minutes worth of oxygen. So if the baby was going to have a problem, that could be the difference between them getting enough air to, be okay until the first responders get there or not.
Mm-hmm. But I still got to, they asked, I asked if I could, because I think they just had it out, and I was like, hey, can I do that? And they're like, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, they, clamped it for you, right? They, put a clamp in, 2 different spots, and then you slice through the middle.
Slice through it, yeah. Which is always, I've done it 3 times now, and it's always a crazy experience. But
then, of course, you left the scalpel on our sink, and then remember what our son said later when he saw it?
Well,
this is a flash forward, but I think this is a key story, so...
Well, I was cleaning up the bathroom later when I had come back before I came to pick you up.
And to set the stage for the story, since he was a C-section, and, he's 5, almost 6 years old now, so, leading up to this birth, we talked a lot about, since I was obviously pregnant, we talked a lot about, pregnancy and also how the baby can get out, because he was super interested in the different ways a baby can get out, because he asked me, could the baby come out of, your mouth, or no. So he knows there's only 2 ways a baby can come out. They can either come out of the mommy's vagina, or they can come out of the mommy's belly, like with him. I had to, be sliced open in the hospital and have an operation, so he knows this. Mm-hmm. So he saw it. It was still kind of bloody. So he sees the scalpel, and
he's like, "Did you have to cut mommy open with that?" Because he thought maybe
you've performed a C-section
upon myself to perform an emergency.
Just
no narcotic or sterile instrument.
No,
fortunately that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, they let me cut the cord. That was cool. I was glad they let me do that. We still have the scalpel. I don't know if they let me to leave that here, but thank you for leaving that here. And then I think they had you stand up because I think they couldn't get the stretcher into our bedroom.
Oh yeah, they couldn't, because we have, our bedroom doors are kind of narrow anyway, and we also have baby gates on them.
They got the stretcher into our apartment, but they couldn't get it all the way into our bedroom.
Well, and they were kind of, I think, getting a little bit worried because I hadn't delivered the placenta. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a time frame, I don't know if it's an hour or 2 hours. They want you to have delivered the placenta within that time. And I was still having contractions, but I think that, my urge to push just wasn't there. I felt like I exhausted my reserves just kind of getting the baby out. And I think there's motivation when it's you're going to get the baby out. There's a certain amount of motivation. The placenta is much less exciting than, an actual person, So I just didn't have the will to push the placenta out, even though I was still having really painful contractions, although not as frequently as I had been having before I had the baby. I was still having really painful contractions. I just didn't have the will to push the placenta out, and I just didn't feel like, I just felt like, what if I push, and I didn't feel like, because with the baby, I didn't even feel like I had a choice. Like, when my body told me it was going to push, it kind of just, like, felt like, well, this is what's happening. With the placenta, I was having the contractions, but I just didn't have that drive to push. I just felt like I couldn't do it. Like, I just was, like, exhausted. So I think they were kind of getting worried, because it's like, if you retain the placenta, they have to, like, you know, get it out of you at, like, the hospital or whatever. Because I think as soon as the baby comes out, the placenta kind of starts to die. And basically it, like, transitions from being, like, a vital... It basically goes very quickly from being a vital organ to just being, like, a rotting hunk of meat, like, poisoning your body. So...
Yes. So, when did the placenta come out?
Not until we got to the hospital.
So it didn't come out.
I mean, you weren't there, so I can fill you in on that.
Okay, well, but yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
But backing up to, we're still at our house. Yeah, they couldn't get this. They had a stretcher they brought in to, like, take me. I did think it was kind of amusing. They asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital.
Like, yes, I wanted to go.
I sort of wondered, like,
could you say no?
Yeah, I think
really.
Okay, well, here's what.
Do they have to ask you if it's okay?
Okay, see, I think if they just took you against your will, that would be some kind of kidnapping, right?
Yeah,
at the same time, though, I feel like what would actually...
say no? Has anyone ever said no to this?
Probably. There's all kinds of people in the world. Here's what I think would happen. Here's what I'm imagining.
Would they just be all right, bye?
No, I don't think that they would just be like, all right, bye. I think if you said no, they would probably just try to urge you more strongly, and eventually the police would probably get involved and force you to go.
Okay.
Because I don't think they can actually just leave you to die if they think you're going to, like, go downhill. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they can take you against your will. But if you refuse to go, I think then they can maybe make a case that they were forced to take you against your will for your own safety or something.
Clearly, this person is insane. Who would not go?
Exactly. Well, because there was a moment when I was kind of considering when they were like, you know, because you obviously couldn't come because the person coming to watch our kids hadn't made it there yet because it was like less than 2 hours, less than the amount of time it was going to take them to drive here. So I think there was still a time where, you know, you weren't going to be able to come with me, and I was like, should we just, you know, when they were like, do you want to go? It's like, it hadn't really occurred to me that I could be not going. So I was kind of like, should I wait and drive with him? And they were like, no, you should really go because the placenta hasn't come out yet. And I was like, yeah, that's probably true.
It's like, we're here anyway. We have the stretcher ready.
But so they helped me out of the tub. And then they helped me onto the bed. Like,
they laid a bunch of, like, disaster blankets on the bed.
And on the floor, which was really nice because our floor has just a few blood stains, but it could have been much, much worse.
I cleaned up later, but yeah, they definitely did a good job of being considerate of that.
But anyway, so they kind of helped me onto the bed because I think they were also still thinking maybe I'll deliver the placenta now at the house, you know, because I was still having contractions and it hasn't come out yet. And then here's the part where I did the most extra thing ever. Because, okay, as I think I mentioned before, I don't remember if I mentioned in this or not, that I had bought a labor and delivery gown. Like, you know how you can buy your own gown to wear at the hospital? So I had bought my own hospital gown, planning, you know, to wear it during the Tasteful Labor and Delivery video. Where I was, like, wearing makeup and, you know, laboring in the attractive hospital gown. But anyway, obviously I was, like, nude.
Mm-hmm.
In the tub, and, you know, so now I'm, like, nude, like, in my, it's a really surreal feeling to be, like, naked in your bedroom, surrounded by, like, 10 strangers. At the same time, I feel like once we're at the actual point of giving birth, in some ways, modesty just goes out the window. It's like, it's nothing they haven't seen before, but still, it's a very strange event. But anyway, so they, like, are like, okay, so they were gonna, like, help me off the bed and, like, onto the stretcher and, like, continue on to the hospital. But I made them wait while I put on the labor gown. I could tell that they were thinking, like, oh my god. But to be fair, it wasn't just that I wanted to get some use out of the hospital gown that I bought, because otherwise it's a total waste, because when am I ever gonna wear this again?
Mm-hmm.
But although it actually was strangely comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I mean, I was nude, and I didn't want to just, like, go to the hospital without any clothes. I mean, I realized that they would give you, like, a gown at the hospital or whatever.
If you're, like, a paper
Yeah, but I just... but I just kind of... I wanted to put my thing on, so I did.
Hey.
So, yeah, like, I made them wait while I, like... I mean, I think, like, one of them actually helped me put it on.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. Anyway, so that was my, like, super extra thing that I did before they, like, put me on the stretcher and, like, wheeled me through the rest of our house.
I think you're allowed one of those if you just want to.
Yeah, like, I wanted to be wearing my thing, and so I was.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I was, because it was really comfortable. It was so much better than, like, the hospital gowns you get at the hospital. It's one of those things people always debate, like, either people are like, I'm so glad I bought this, or they're like, it's a total waste of money, and I'm definitely erring on the side of I'm so glad I bought this. Even though I didn't even give birth at the hospital, I'm still glad that I had the gown. But anyway, so I got on the stretcher, and then they, like, wheeled me through our living room and kitchen and out the door. And before, as we went by, our son was still, like, in the living room, and he, like, came up, and he gave the baby, like, a kiss.
It was very sweet.
It was very sweet. And they wheeled me, and it was, like, really cold outside, I remember. It was, like, cold, and, like, the baby was riding with me. She was riding on my chest. And we got in the ambulance, and it was sort of exciting in the sense that I've never ridden in an ambulance before. And it's one of those things where, like, I like to have different experiences, so I'm sort of happy I got to experience riding in an ambulance, especially when I got to experience it under happy circumstances.
Yeah, nothing terrible happened.
Most imaginary circumstances where I would get to ride in an ambulance, it's like, you know, something horrible's happened. So I'm kind of really happy that I got to have the experience of riding in the ambulance, but for, like, a happy reason.
Right.
Even though it was a really uncomfortable ride, because I was still having contractions, not as close together, but they were still, like, really painful contractions. And so it was really just less comfortable than you would hope, like, being on a stretcher and having painful contractions, and then our, like, community where we live has, like, a bunch of speed bumps, and, like, it was really painful every time we'd, like, go over a speed bump.
Right.
But the people in the ambulance with me were, like, super nice. Like, they were, like, talking to me the whole time. I mean, I'd probably make sure that I wasn't, like, dying or whatever, but still.
Yeah.
Like, I, like, appreciated, like, all of them.
Good. They seemed competent when they were here.
Yeah, like, they seemed like they knew what they were doing and were not, like, weird like the woman on the phone.
Yes.
But anyway, we got to the hospital, I feel like, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure. They didn't have the siren on?
I mean, can you hear the siren if you're inside the ambulance?
I would think so.
I don't think the siren was on, but I think we were going faster than, like...
Were the lights on?
I think the lights were on, but not the siren.
Lights, no siren.
I feel like when we went outside, the lights were on.
When they were parked out in the parking lot, the lights were definitely on.
Yeah, like when I went out, when they took me out there, the lights were on. I don't think the siren was on, but the lights were on. And they were definitely going fast, and they were, like, talking... I heard them, like, talking on the radio to, like, say they were coming and everything. To, like, you know.
So you got to the hospital, because I'm still at home at this point, so I don't know any of this, really.
I got to the hospital, and they put a mask on me, and they told me to, like, bring, like, the blanket up, like, over the baby, like, so that, like, she would be, like, somewhat protected. And they, like, wheeled us inside and, like, through, like, I think we went in maybe an elevator and, like, through some corridors. Hospitals are always, like, so twisty. I feel like they're always, like, octagons of confusion. Like, I feel like we, like, went around, like, several corners and, like, through some hallways. But anyway, we eventually ended up in, like, a large, like, I guess it's like I guess it was part of
where we were with Emerald?
No, it was different looking. I think it was more
so
of like
wasn't
an
it wasn't like a birthing suite.
I mean, I guess maybe it was because it had all the birthing equipment, but it looked more like emergency-ish. Maybe it was just a different birthing suite, but I don't know if they have a certain one for, like, when people come in and it's like an emergency, or, like, it was different. It was definitely different than the one that we gave birth in last time. But they, like, wheeled me in there, but it was basically the same setup in that there was, like, there were, like, a few nurses, but, like, one specifically, you know, for me and one specifically for the baby, and then the doctor came in, and, so the one nurse took the baby, to, like, it was the same setup where, like, on the side of the room they have, like, the scale and the warming pan and all that stuff. And they did, like, her footprints. And, you know, they, like, weighed her and measured her. And, the doctor came in, and they were like debating whether they were going to have to give me like a shot of like oxytocin or something to like deliver the placenta. But then since I was still having contractions, and then the doctor was like, okay, the placenta's right there, just push it, you can push it out. And so then I just like pushed really hard and it like came right out. Mm-hmm. So then I kind of wished that I had just pushed it out earlier, because then as soon as I pushed it out, the contractions stopped, which was so relieving, because I was like just so incredibly uncomfortable.
Right.
So I kind of wished then that if I'd known, you know, how easy it was going to be comparatively to like the amount of suffering, I would have just pushed it out sooner. But I think just having the doctor say, like, it's literally, like, right here, you know, like, that was, like, enough to give me the motivation to push it out. Whereas before, I think I was just afraid I was going to be pushing and pushing. It was, like, it was going to happen somehow. I don't know why I thought that. But anyway, I made them save it until I could take pictures of it. Because I wanted to, like, see what the placenta looked like.
Well, it's always fascinating.
Yeah, and I thought you might want to see it, too, since you were there. And, you know, it was very interesting.
So
giant and red and meaty.
Yeah, that's pretty much what
Lots of veins.
Absolutely. Amazing. But she was fine.
But she was fine, yeah. They said she looked excellent. They said her, which is funny, they said her, what's that, the AGPAR score or whatever? Because they did that in the ambulance. They did that, like, on the way, and they said it was, like, a 10, which I thought was funny, because I remember reading in the book that they never give a 10. Because they were like, they always want to leave room for improvement or whatever. But everyone who looked at her in the hospital, too, said she was perfect.
Oh, yeah. Very long toes.
I wonder where those came from. And long fingers. Everyone kept noticing her long fingers.
It's funny because we have pictures of our other two children grabbing my fingers when...
Like right after they came out.
They came out, and she did the exact same thing, but with her toes.
I mean, when you
I don't have a photo of it.
I have been telling you for years that you should exercise your toes so that you can use your long toes.
I think if you play your cards right with this one, with Lilac, I don't think we said her name yet.
We haven't.
Lilac Georgiana.
Lilac Georgiana Burgess.
But I think if you play your cards right with her, you could really get some use out of those toes. She's very dexterous with them.
She is very dexterous with them.
But her weight was good. I think the only thing that ended up being an issue was the fluid or whatever.
Yeah, she ended up in, like, the next couple days at the hospital. Because even though we had a home birth, you know, since we went to the hospital, we then had to stay for, like, the required amount of time as though we'd had her there. She did cough up a bunch of fluid, which they said was not... They said it was not from being born in the water. They said it was just from being born really fast. Because I guess if you descend slowly down the birth canal, the whole time they're descending slowly down the birth canal, they're getting squeezed. So all the fluid that's in their stomach from when they're, like, living in you, it kind of gets squeezed out. But since she came out really fast, like, didn't get squeezed out. So she had, like, a lot of fluid in her belly that she kind of, like, cough up over the next couple of days.
But other than that, she's great.
Yeah, that doesn't really diminish her in any way.
No. And she's, like, gained weight. And
yeah, she's gaining weight nicely.
She's eating really well.
And she looks, like, we were kind of surprised to discover, like, I think she's going to have hazel eyes, because, like, our son, he had blue eyes when he was born, and they turned hazel, which, I mean, you have hazel eyes, so it makes sense. And she also has blue eyes, so I think her eyes are going to be hazel. And her hair is, like, different, I think, than either of our kids' hair has been. I don't know how it's going to end up, but it's kind of it's like a brown, but it's like an auburnish brown.
She has clear eyebrows.
Yes, she has clear eyebrows and kind of auburn hair. So I'm interested to see if she's going to be an auburn.
Do you think she's going to be a redhead?
That's what I mean. Like, auburn is like a red-brown combo.
You don't think she could just be straight up red? Would it be like...
I think her hair is pretty dark, right? Like, it's a dark red right now.
Do actual redheads just start red?
Well, actually, I read something interesting about red hair. Apparently, for hair color, you get a gene from each parent, and then your hair color is a combination. So, for example, if you get a red hair gene from one parent and a brown hair gene from the other parent, then you're an auburn. If you get a blonde hair gene from one parent and a red hair gene from the other parent, then you're a strawberry blonde. If you get a red and a red, then you're a red. So I'm saying I think she might have a red and a brown, making her an auburn.
That makes sense.
But I'll be interested to see how that you know, because her hair could lighten and be redder, or it could darken and be browner, or it could, like, fall out and turn into something else. Because, I mean, like, I feel like hair color is the least certain when you have a baby. Because with our son,
changes so
his
much.
hair was, like, almost black when he was born. It was really short. And then...
His hair is nothing like that now.
Well, it all fell out like a sad old man, and then it came back and it was blonde.
Mm-hmm.
And then it darkened, and it's, like, kind of a medium nut brown now.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying I'm not really sticking. I don't think we can, like, know what her hair is going to do. Like, I'm hoping her hair is not going to, like, fall out, but...
Before.
Yeah, I'm just saying it could fall out and then be a different color, or it could lighten or darken. But I do think that she has some ginger in her. And, like, her clear eyebrows make me think that she could be, like, kind of more on the gingery side, not just brown. Which is exciting.
And she has a really big mole on her right ear.
It's a little bit higher than an earring would be, but it still kind of looks like an earring.
It's like one of those, what do they call it when it's like the middle part that people get, not the bottom part?
I don't know what that's called, but I know what you mean. It's like the torgulus or something. That's
know.
not the technical word. I don't know. But, no, she's super cute, though, and, yeah, it is surprising how she looks, because we had considered, you know, will she look like our son or our daughter? I think she looks a little more like our son, but she also just looks kind of like her own third, separate,
she doesn't
totally
even
different
really
person.
look like either of them. She's like both, but she's kind of her own thing.
But it's funny because even before this happened with her birth, we kept, you know, joking about how, like, she was such a sneaky, surprising individual because, you know, she surprised us, like, we didn't know we were pregnant because, you know, since we weren't, like, pushing for it, and then, you know, we didn't really, like, the signs weren't really incredibly clear immediately either, so we were pregnant for, like, a few weeks before we figured it out. So that was, like, a big surprise, and we thought that was, like, the big surprise, but I think, you know, unexpectedly being born, you know, unassisted home birth in the bathtub, I think is a bigger surprise.
Well, assisted. You were assisted.
No, I think they call it an unassisted birth if you don't have a, like, trained birth assistant there.
Okay.
I think if just your husband and you deliver the baby, that's unassisted.
I fully concede that you had the hardest job of anyone.
No, I'm not saying unassisted as in, like, I was alone. I just mean unassisted in the sense that I think if you don't have a trained birth professional with you, it's considered unassisted. So I think the idea is that the person assisting you is someone who knows what they're doing. Which, okay, the thing is, I actually think this was the best birth that we've had.
Well, I mean, you said later that you pretty much got everything you wanted, except maybe, like, we should have, like, cleaned the tub a little bit better before.
Yeah, well, the two things that I would change if I had been anticipating this is that even though I don't actually think their services would have been necessary, other than really more for aftercare, not so much for the birth itself, is when we could have used someone. But I would have had, you know, a midwife or, you know, a trained medical, you know, someone with us. Not because we ended up needing them actually with, like, the delivery or anything, and I would have been fine with them just, like, standing back and letting us do it the way that things worked out. It was fine, and I'm just as happy to not have them involved. But I think it would have been good to have someone there. You know, if we had planned this, I would have had a midwife there who knows what they're doing and who has, you know, sterile equipment and supplies, and who, you know, I think that when they come to your house, they have oxygen, they have Pitocin and stuff like that in case they should need it. So you have, you know, and they know, you know, what to do. You know, they know, like, infant CPR and what to do if something goes wrong, you know, in a basic sense. So I do think I would have had that if we were planning it. And the other thing is, yes, I would have cleaned the bathtub better, like, you know, probably sterilized the tub, and also had, you know...
I would have washed my hands, probably, before I stuck them in the water.
And also just had, you know, supplies on hand, like... Sure. We weren't prepared with, like, a bunch of, you know, clean, sterile towels and blankets, like, and stuff.
Some random towels from, like,
you tried to bring, like, one of the kids, like, alligator towels, and I, like, told you to take it away because I didn't want it to get ruined.
I managed to save every single towel and
I'm really
blanket.
Proud of your laundering skills.
I did it twice with the OxyClean.
Yes.
Everybody. Not an ad.
But you see what I'm saying? So the two things I would change is that I would have prepared our home, you know, by cleaning it
Yeah.
And having, the blankets and the towels and stuff. And I would have had someone on hand, in case we needed them, to help us. But those two details aside, I did get everything I wanted with the birth. And some of them were things that I wanted and was hoping to get at the hospital, and some were things that I wouldn't have gotten at the hospital. Like, for example, as we, I think, mentioned, I hated having to be monitored. I hated the feeling of the monitors on my stomach at the hospital, and, getting in and out of the water to be monitored and get back in the water. And so it's kind of really nice that I didn't have to do that this time.
Totally.
And I do wonder in some ways if the labor progressed so quickly because we were at home. I mean, in the sense that, obviously...
You told her to come out.
I did. Well, yeah, I told her I wanted her to be born soon. But also...
You really didn't want to go to your appointment.
That's true. But also, I just mean, I'm more comfortable, obviously, in my own bathtub. So maybe once I got into the water... I mean, I think the contractions were already coming pretty fast. But I feel like once I got into the tub, I think my body may have just been like, okay, we're having the baby now. You know what I mean? Also, I think another thing that I did, something I did differently this time to deal with the contractions, and to be fair, like I said before, I was having back labor with Emerald, and I feel like that was worse in the sense that I didn't feel like there was a space between the contractions. Even though the pain of these contractions was just as bad or maybe worse than that, it was just, different. I wonder if I labored so efficiently that she came out so fast, too. Because I do think that even though the pain was still really excruciating, mentally, I feel like I knew what I was doing better, in the sense that with Emerald, we tried to, we had kind of done, a home study of, a birthing technique where it's, you're, a big relaxed bag of water or something, and letting the surges push the baby out. I can't remember the name of the technique we used, but it ended up that didn't work for me at all. I wasn't able. I was in so much pain that I wasn't able to relax.
And it was artificial. It wasn't something natural to you anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like the whole idea of that plan was that you relax and you allow your body to do the work. I was able to not relax. In a way, well, yeah, I was able to relax more this time because I actually used a lot of the technique that we studied in our meditations. We've been doing, what is the name of that meditation that we've been doing?
Waking Up.
Yeah, so we've been doing that, Waking Up. It's an app, right?
Yeah, it's by Sam Harris,
the
neuroscientist. He has a meditation practice.
But there was something in that in one of the episodes that we listened to that I found so helpful that I ended up using this time that I think helped me to really not cope with, because if you're in excruciating pain, you can really describe yourself as coping, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, how I progressed through the labor, I was thinking about, in one episode, he says, when you experience pain, you've already survived the pain that you're experiencing in that moment. So the problem that you have with the pain is actually just your fear of what the next moment is going to bring. Because you've already survived the moment that you're in, because you're in it. It's really just you're afraid of what the next moment will bring, and that it might be more painful or worse or something. But you honestly have no way of knowing that. You don't know what the next moment is going to bring. Maybe it will bring relief or something. So that really resonated with me. And I was thinking about that a lot while I was in labor. So I was thinking about, as I was having each contraction, I was thinking, you've already survived this contraction. And you know for a fact that, eventually you're going to be on the other side of this and it's going to be better. And I was just, thinking that with every contraction. And that allowed me, I think, to be less, clenched than I was last time I was in labor. I think that was really helpful. And I think the other thing that was really helpful, but maybe too helpful, was that I kept thinking, with each contraction, I was just thinking, okay, this is very uncomfortable, but this is just, bringing Lilac closer to, coming out. And I was thinking that with every contraction. But I don't know if maybe thinking that made it happen, faster, or...
You really wanted to see her, and she obviously wanted to be here very quickly, too, so... I think that definitely resonated with her, too.
But she's the best baby. I mean, I know, like, we've said that about every of our babies that we've had. Because, I mean, you have a baby and you just, you love them and you think they're amazing. But she really is very amazing.
She's the top shelf baby.
She's very good.
High quality, high grade.
She's, like, super cute, too.
Mm-hmm. And,
She has, like, the best personality, I can tell already.
I know. She really does.
And she likes you a lot.
Wow.
I think it's that one time when you scooped her out of the water that really brought you together.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mean to brag or anything, but, that was probably a pretty good beginning to our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think she feels like you're someone she can really count on. Yeah.
Start your relationship. That's a pretty good start.
Yeah. I think this was an interesting event for our relationship, too. I mean, little did we think that, you have a baby with somebody. You don't necessarily think that you and the person you had the baby with will be delivering the baby yourselves.
Yeah. That was a special moment. That was on par with some of the craziest, maybe the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. But yeah, I wasn't scared either when it happened. Like, it was kind of like, just, it's happening. Like, it's just happening, and there's nothing to think about except what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you really just have to deal with what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to panic, and it's like, I kind of felt like this is probably going to be okay, and I mean, if it hadn't been, we would have just had to try to deal with it as whatever situation unfolded. There's no way to anticipate. You could, like,
I'm calling 911 immediately, no matter what. So
exactly. So it's like, we already know that
good, bad.
Yeah.
The authorities will be notified.
It's kind of a nice position to be in, though, when you're calling 911 and you feel like things have already kind of worked out.
Yeah.
Like, I think we were feeling pretty good at the time that you called 911. Like, the baby was out, and, like, she was, like, a good color. We could tell that she was, like, she was breathing well and everything. And, like, I didn't seem to be, like, hemorrhaging or anything.
Yeah. I mean, really, the only reason I called 911 and not, like, a regular doctor number was, like, I didn't want to, if something for some reason started to go wrong, later on they'd be like, well, Rob, you didn't call.
No, I think it was good that you called 911.
Yeah, I mean,
because,
yeah.
Well, also because, I mean, like we said, we didn't have all the they brought a bunch of blankets, they brought the clamps for the cord, they brought the scalpel, we didn't have any of that stuff, so we really would have had to, like, tie it off with your sweatshirt and, like, and I think me riding to the hospital in the ambulance was, yes, much better than, like, can you imagine how awful it would have been trying to get me into the car?
Yeah, I don't know.
With, like, the dangly umbilical cord, like, hanging between my legs, like...
I don't know.
Even with them getting me into, like, the stretcher, there was a moment where, like, the dangly... Because they cut the umbilical cord really long.
Yeah.
There was a moment where it, like, slightly snapped in, like, a piece of cloth, and the guy was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I was like,
oh wow.
And it feels really weird when it's, like, sort of dangling out of you, because it's, like, attached to something, so, like, it feels like I can't even, like, describe. But
you can't feel with it, right?
You can't feel with it, but you feel it, like, tugging, like... You know what I mean? So, like, it's like if a piece of string was tied onto the inside of your body and it got snapped on, so you would feel it tugging on the inside of your body. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
But yeah, no, I think it was better that I rode in the ambulance. And like I said, like, everything worked out well, and, like, me and the baby were in, like, perfect condition. But had we not been, I think we made the right choice to, get people there that could help us, as soon as possible. So that's why I'm saying, even though I would be fine with them not being involved necessarily, because I actually kind of prefer just kind of how we ended up doing it ourselves. If we were planning a home birth in the future, I would still want to have a midwife there. Just, someone who has that knowledge in case it's needed. Yeah,
I definitely didn't have... I mean, I knew enough that I was able to make it happen, whatever needed to happen, but... I don't know. If anything had gone...
If things had gone terribly wrong, we wouldn't have really known what to do. So
I had no, like, medical knowledge, so...
I will say that after you called 911, the first responders got here very quickly.
Yeah, I was impressed with the response time.
I mean, like, how long would you say it was before, like, from when you called and that policewoman showed up?
A little over 5 minutes is, like... Because I knew because I hung up, and I think it said something like 5 minutes or some and change when I had hung up, so...
But no, I mean, so I think that was, it was very wild. Yeah. I can't believe that happened.
I know, I'm still kind of in shock about it.
Yeah, I'm in shock in the sense that I can't believe that that's, like, how it played out, because that wasn't what we planned. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I'm delighted that it, like, turned out so well.
And what a story to begin a life with, you know?
Yeah, I mean, she has a great birth story. I mean, it would already have been interesting enough just being like, oh, you were born during, like, this really weird, you know, time in history where there's, like, a pandemic happening and everything. Mm-hmm. But now there's layered on top of that, it's like, as we accidentally, like, birthed you, like, we had you, like, in the bathtub and, like, you know. But yeah, she just wanted to come out. It wasn't easy, but it was fast.
It was fast. I was impressed. I mean, there was a moment where I was like, all right, what do we do now? Like, but you were like, well, here we go, pushing.
Well, I've never felt like, okay, I feel like people are always talking about, like, now you can push, like, you get permission to push from the doctor or something, and I never really felt like my body was, like, willing to, like, be subject to that. Like, I feel like both times, even though both of my birth experiences have been really different in a lot of ways, both times when my body decided that the baby was coming out, that's when my body decided the baby was coming out. It didn't really feel, like, optional to me. Mm. Like, at the point when I was like, I feel like she's coming out. Oh, yeah, she is. I don't want to make it sound like she just had, like, sort of slipped through the birth canal without me doing any work. Like, I was, like, having, like, excruciating contractions. It's just, when I felt the urge to push, it didn't feel optional. It just felt like push now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It did feel optional when I had pushed her shoulders out. It was like, that was more of, like, a decision, I feel like. Because, like I said, that was my one moment where I was, like, scared. Like, I was like, I really want to get her out of the water, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, that was kind of the same way with Emerald, too. I mean, I think once, because the head came out and then, like...
But with her, I remember I had to push really hard to get her head out.
You did. But I felt like once you were through the shoulders, everything else just kind of, like, just came... immediately.
But I don't remember Emerald's shoulders being so much work. I remember her head being more work than her shoulders.
No, I'm sure in the long haul, yes. But I'm saying, like, as far as, like, the progression of it.
No, I know what you're saying is, like, the speed of when they came out. But what I'm saying is that, like, with Emerald, like,
head out was more work.
I remember pushing very hard. Mm-hmm. And, like, a lot. And it was, like, a very concentrated effort. Mm-hmm. To get her head out, and then her shoulders I don't remember being really difficult. I remember, like, her head came out, and then I remember just, like, I just kind of gave one more big push and her shoulders came flying out. Whereas with Lilac, I was just kind of pushing, just like that was just what my body told me to do. And then her head was coming out, and then I mean, I remember, like, being like, I'm going to push her out now, and, like, pushing, and, like, her head coming out. But I guess what I'm saying is with Emerald, I remember with her head, there was a point where I remember I felt like I was, like, up against a brick wall. Like, I needed to push harder to get her out. And it was, like, it seemed like it was beyond what was going to be possible, and I had to, like, push through it. I didn't feel that way about Lilac's head, but I felt that way about her shoulders. Mm. Like, in the moment when her head was out but her shoulders weren't, it felt like impossibly difficult to get her shoulders out. Like, they felt like they were, like, really wedged in there. And then I had to, like, make that conscious effort to be like, I am going to make this happen. Mm-hmm. In a different sort of focused way than I did with... Yeah.
Well, next time, like you said before... We're just going to have to plan on giving birth at home next time, right?
Well, I mean, I did ask my doctor about this. I was like, so when someone gives birth this fast, if they're having, like, another kid, you know, like, I presume they can't, like, plan on making it, do you just, like, get a tent and, like, live in the hospital parking lot or whatever? And they said that they often suggest people do, like, a planned induction before the birth, just to, like, avoid this happening once this has happened. But I probably wouldn't do that. So I think next time we will have to have a home birth. But honestly, I would rather have a home birth anyway next time. I mean, before I think...
As long as, you know, everything medically checks out and we have a way to, like, call for help if we need it.
Well, because before we, I think, didn't do a home birth, you know, because with our son, you know, we needed to have a C-section, and that's obviously not something that you do in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think with the VBAC, it just seemed...
This is a new thing. We want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, it seemed riskier. It's harder to find a provider.
You don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah, you don't know if it's going to work. There's a higher chance of transferring to the hospital. It's harder to find a provider who will do a home birth for a VBAC. I think once you've had 2 successful VBACs, it's probably easier.
You prove that you can do it and do it again.
Yeah, because I think a responsible midwife doesn't want to take on a case necessarily where they think there's a high probability it's going to go terribly wrong. I think a good midwife is going to tell you if they think you'd be better off going, to the hospital or whatever. Not that I'm saying that you shouldn't try to do a first VBAC at home. I'm just saying I feel like it's harder to find, it's more of a gamble for the midwife. Whereas I feel like now we're less of a gamble because we've had 2 very successful. Even though Emerald's delivery in the hospital was harder in a lot of ways and took longer, it was still a very successful delivery. And there weren't any big complications or anything. And then obviously this went amazingly well. They did tell me that generally the faster deliveries don't have complications. I assume because the delivery happens so fast because everything in your body and the baby's body is lined up right,
Yeah, she just came right out. Didn't have any problems, it seemed like.
Yeah. But yeah, no, after this, I would actually really want to do a home birth. But like I said, I would want to have someone there for, medical, whatever. And also, I would have liked to have sterilized the tub. We needed so many more towels and blankets.
Oh yeah, we had no clue.
Although, we've acquired several emergency blankets they left behind.
Hey.
So...
If there's any kind of disaster or...
If we have any need for kind of a rough woven cotton blanket.
Exactly.
It's really,
But, yeah, I'm amazed that happened. I'm just still...
Yeah, surprised.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I'm shocked. Lilac did it again.
Yes, she did.
Can't wait to see what else she has to surprise us with.
It's interesting. I think you thought people would be more surprised about her name, but I actually think people are less surprised about her name than Emerald.
Really? Because I think that both names are perfectly fine names for a person to be...
I think so too, but I feel like people are always shocked when we tell them Emerald's name.
They don't think it's a real name.
Everyone seems to be less surprised about Lilac. They're just oh, Lilac, okay.
But I feel like they're both real things in the world.
And they're both things that humans have been named in, maybe not in large numbers, but throughout history, human beings have been named things.
They sound like names.
Yes. I agree.
It's not like Elon Musk's ridiculous idea.
So you said that this is a son or a daughter is named Ash, but it's the symbol?
It's the A-E smashed together, and then the middle part.
So it's the rune.
Yeah. But apparently...
No, it's not a rune, there's another name for it. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm very upset.
But apparently it might not be legal in California because it's not
probably not because
character.
No, it's probably not because I remember at one point when we were considering a name with an umlaut, and then I found out that in Indiana you can't have an umlaut or something.
I think it's because they have to be able to type your name on official forms using keyboards and
using regular keyboards, not special keyboards. The Elon Musk will have imported.
Don't have to
So legally, are they going to have to name him something else?
I don't know.
They're just going to end up naming him Ash, spelled the right way.
I'm so sorry, Ash.
It's very upsetting.
But Lilac is asleep.
She is very sleepy. We usually have put her to bed by now, so we've kept her up late. Kept up is not the right word because she's sleeping in my arms instead of in her bassinet, but she is powered into I think a deep phase of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully she'll sleep well tonight. Hopefully it won't be a milk drinking festival all night long.
Like it was the other night.
Oh. And by the other night you mean several nights of the past couple weeks.
Yes.
Yes. I feel like some nights she sleeps really well.
Mm-hmm.
And other nights it's just a strange milk drinking festival all night long. And I can't quite figure out if there's anything that I'm doing differently to influence it, or if it's just that some nights she's hungrier because she's growing more.
She's just I think she's on a growth spurt. I can tell she's filling out.
Yeah, she is right now. I can tell she's she looks real good.
Doesn't she look more filled in, her skin and her
I do think, yeah, I think her
cartilage,
flesh is filling in nicely. I
Yeah.
mean, she wasn't, like, super thin before, but she was little. And now she's, like, slightly chunkier.
No, I'm noticing a little more chunk, but I like that. I like when babies get more chunky because they feel more substantial.
Yeah.
Like they can advocate for their own safety a little better.
I think her clothes are hanging on her body slightly less billowy than they were before.
She was so tiny inside them before. Well, she was kind of scrunched up still, so it was like she started to like expand.
She's like stretching her legs and stuff out more. I always feel like it's really sad when their legs get sucked up inside their sleepers.
Was Cap the one that like
his legs were folded?
Yeah.
And they would like always go up by his head. He was so crunched.
I know.
He was very badly crunched inside of me.
He made it out.
I'm glad he made it out safely.
But yeah, she was, I think, a little less crunched than he was.
No, I think she was absolutely not crunched, because apparently she just was able to just fly right out when the time came.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he would have done well in a vaginal birthing situation. She, on the other hand.
She gets high marks. A+. Okay, well, that's my cue.
Join the Rob Burgess Show mailing list. Go to tinyletter.com/The Rob Burgess Show and type in your email address. Then respond to the automatic message. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, RSS, and now Spotify. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. If you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. Also, if you want to call or text the show for any reason, the number is 317-674-3547. Until next time.